right, so it looked like we have everybody here, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. First, I'm gonna start off with roll call. And Mary Ann Abadi.
Present.
Dick Cooner. He's here. Danielle Angelari.
Present.
Linda Sanquist.
Here.
Dr. Cherry Giardini.
Present.
Dr. Bill Gorski.
Here.
Dr. Julie Morris.
Here.
Dr. K. Edward Copeland.
Here.
Wendy Larson Bennett. She's here. And Jay Ware.
I'm unmuted here.
All right, we have everyone here for this mental health board meeting on May 1st, 2020. Next, we'll have the approval of minutes for April 3rd, 2020 and April 21st, 2020. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Terry, we motioned and I need a second.
Second. Okay.
Anybody else want to second it?
I'll second it.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Now we have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
This signify by waving your hand or saying yes.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have public comment. I don't think we had anyone sign up for public comment. Dan, did you get anybody sign up?
No, we didn't get anything.
Okay, thanks a lot. Action items, the adoption of the bylaws. Dick, do you want to speak to that?
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Did we already approve the minutes? Did I miss that piece?
Yes, that's what we just did.
For both of the
Yeah, I did them both at the same time.
Okay. First of all, Dr. Copeland, do you have an issue? Did you have an issue with the minutes? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So, folks, you've received a copy or the draft copy of the bylaws. The one change that was recommended came from Dr. Gorski, and that was that we include under membership a comment or a section that spoke to staggered terms, which we added, and so that feature is now in there. So so again, you know, I guess I'm making a motion that the bylaws be that we move to accept the bylaws.
I wanted a discussion on something. I sent an email, it was late, but basically I want to make sure that we're not only just dealing with services for the mentally ill, but also having some monies and some focus on some of the structures surrounding the mentally ill in our community. Specifically, there was just a catastrophic failure a year and a half ago where Terry Blake ended up dying. And as we looked at it, what we realized is that the police department just don't have as many options available to them as they probably could have and should have, and other cities do. And I wanted to make sure that we were going to take a look at that. It's something that was also put in my blurb. My brother was schizophrenic, and that was one of the, just a shadow, is just this lurking fear that he would be acting weird one day and come across a police department and end up dead. And this has happened in this community not long ago. And it seems like the purpose is very much focused on services for the individual, but we also need to look at how the jail is doing and police department and so on and so forth.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
just
Wendy.
say a point of order? I think the proper way to do this is to move for the approval of the bylaws, have a second,
Oh, yeah.
and then let's have a discussion. Let's go through the bylaws themselves, and we can then move to amend them in various ways as we agree.
You're right.
Okay, so let's get it on the floor.
So Wendy's
would-
giving the motion. Anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Now we
Okay.
could discuss.
Now let's, so what,
My
you're,
comment, my response,
Jay, I think you're talking to Article 2 under purposes, is that correct?
Yes, I am, and it seems like the purpose is so narrowly defined that the issues I'm talking about might not get looked at.
my comment to that would be, Jay, that would come under our community scan. And that would come under, the crisis services. So if you go back to what we sent out in terms of the community support program, structural issues are involved in that. And so, for example, looking at police training and those sorts of things would be part of what we would consider under clinical services. So I don't, when we talk about services for the mentally ill, I mean, we are encompassing those sorts of structural pieces that we want to look at to make sure that people are being cared for and treated correctly in the community.
But I'm looking at the way the purposes is written. So in the second sentence, it says, providing services to individuals whose illnesses prevent their functioning in age-appropriate social roles shall be the service priority of the mental health board. Wouldn't it be as simple as providing after who illness prevents their functioning in social roles, and the structures, the community structures that support them or that interact with them or something like that, so that it's clear to the future that it's not just one-on-one services. Does
So
that-
I'm gonna let Mary Ann go ahead and speak first because she sounded like she was trying to speak to it. Then I'll let Dr. Copeland speak and then I'll say something.
Well, my only comment, I agree with everything Dick just said in his explanation. I think what we want to make sure of is that it's general enough in terms of these bylaws. This is an initial draft. It's a working document. I mean, even if we approve this, we can amend our bylaws as we go along, which as recent as our last meeting, Stevenson County took a look, and before they sent theirs, they amended them and they redid them actually. So I don't think that this locks us into any priority. It definitely revolves around services, and that can be training. It can be, providing individual services, group services, educational services, all related to mental health and substance abuse. So I just want you to know that this is broad, and I think on purpose, so that we're not, our bylaws are not really designating the dollars ahead of time. It's just, it's giving a purpose and a goal for what we're up to here.
Go ahead, Dr. Copeland.
So first of all, I want to thank everybody who, particularly Dick, who worked on these bylaws. I think they're very good, they're clear, and I think they are trying to do what you just said, and that is be broad enough to really get us going, recognizing that we can amend them as we go. But I would like to make a suggestion in light of what Jay said, and a concern that I had. When I first read them, I remember, I think there was language in section 4 where it talks about these funds may only be used to provide mental health services. And I was thinking about the fact that, you know, that's part of the charge of the board, and particularly the treasurer or whoever, to make sure that the money is going exactly where we said it would go when we were campaigning and all those types of things. But in light of what Jay said, which I agree with wholeheartedly, I think we could just put some language in here somewhere, just a sentence somewhere that talks about, or that mirrors the language in the statute that talks about the board's powers and duties, and just say, and any additional duties or powers that are granted to us within the statute, because the statute does say very clearly in a particular section that we have the power to consult with other appropriate private and public agencies in the development of local plans. So if we could just sort of do what has already been done in basically most of the bylaws, and that is just most of this draft of the bylaws, which is just track the language of the statute. And then, you know, we're covered as it relates to whether it be planning or dealing with structural issues or whatever, because the actual statute does not just focus on, you know, one-on-one services. And I don't think that we want to either. So let's just track that language.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, yeah, it's really important, because when we looked into that, money was one of the constraints, and it was hugely frustrating, because we're like, well, how many dead people do we have to have before we can spend this money? And it was very frustrating. It felt like we were being put off. And now we've got a mental health board, and we do have to make sure that that our whole culture in this town is different, and that we don't continue to have these things happen, because that wasn't a one-off. He wasn't the first one. He probably wasn't even the 10th person, you know, that has died like that. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Gorski.
You know, I appreciate what Mary Ann said, and also Ed and Jay. You bringing that up again, I think, is something we all should listen very carefully to. I'm just in favor of anything that doesn't box us in with bylaws. I mean, to me, bylaws should be guideposts, and anything that can broaden the language, I think, was where Ed was going to, that, you know, not indiscriminately broadens the language, but broadens the language that gives us latitude in appropriate ways, even understanding they can be amended and changed in the future. But I like the idea of a broad enough statement that allows that latitude within what, from a regulatory perspective, we have been given those powers. So I like that idea of not feeling penned in by bylaws.
That's a good comment. That's how I felt. I felt it wouldn't let us look at the schools, wouldn't let us look at other things, you know.
The good point. I mean, again, from experience, I was thinking, Bill, that we are really talking about structures, but you have to, you know, always my concern is from over the years of it seems like the culture, the serious mentally ill people are always put to the rear, and I don't. That's, you know, I more than anything else, I really want to protect the focus of our mission of going toward those people where, for example, like the community support program speaks to, along with the addicts, but certainly we want to find a way to make sure that the culture, you know, supports that. On the other hand, when you start talking about broad language, I get nervous because I've seen too much mission drift over the years that becomes all inclusive. In fact, if you look around at some of the 708 boards right now, and look at some of the programs that they're funding, I mean, I would argue that they are in fact violating House Bill 708. That they ought to, somebody somewhere ought to call them to what it is that they're doing, because they certainly don't represent best practice in terms of mental health and addiction. So, but I'm if we can wordsmith this to add something that gives you comfort that we're not just simply talking about one-to-one therapies, but rather therapies that deal with the culture, I'm for that. That's because Jay, I would tell you, I would love to see is, as strong as we possibly can, and with all first responders, that they know how to deal with and feel comfortable dealing with serious mentally ill people and those who are addicted.
I agree, Dick. Well said.
Yeah, maybe it is, because I was just reading it again, and it says for Winnebago County residents suffering from serious mental illness and addictions. Okay, well that limits. That doesn't talk about training for people at the jail, crisis intervention training, and maybe even a team that could be called. The incident that I'm thinking about, the police had a situation, and they knew it was more than just what the normal police could handle, and so they had to make a call for a special team to come in and deal with it. But that special team didn't have anything to do with mental illness and had everything to do with dealing with a terrorist or something, and that's what they did. Although he wasn't a terrorist, that's the problem.
So Jay, I understand what you're trying to say, and this was in our bylaws. So when we get to develop in our span of service, we can include that in our span of service and our details in our span of service. Because I understand, just like I believe you sent me the video where it was a police department that had 2 officers dedicated solely to issues with mental illnesses, and they were totally dedicated and trained to work with people under mental illness. And if we could just put that, training those officers like that in our span of service, the bylaws right now give us the leeway to do that. We just have to define that in our span of service right now.
Okay. I'm feeling better about it. Glad to have the conversation.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Under responsibilities, in section 1, it would be very easy to say to annually review services and add training in Winnebago County. Major priorities will address critical gaps in services and training in Winnebago County. That wouldn't limit us, but it would include Jay's concern. I'm just trying to find a place to.
Where was that spot we're looking?
It's under section 5, responsibilities. Section 1 of that, it talks about what we're supposed to do annually.
Okay.
All right, and then we still want to, in section 4, you still wanted to add the state statutes. Is that right, Dr. Copeland?
Oh, there you go.
I don't care where we add it. I just think that there ought to be some language in there that says, or that articulates that we have all the powers and duties and everything that the statute gives us.
And Dr. Copeland, under purposes, the first sentence says, as authorized by the Community Mental Health Act, and it cites the entire act. So in other words, our purpose is to plan, implement, and monitor pursuant to the Community Mental Health Act.
All right, so we just, the first section where it states that, that's good enough?
I don't know. That's what I'm just pointing out.
Okay.
Go
ahead, Marianne.
Back to that idea of section 1, even if you just change the word, okay, it says annually review and evaluate community needs, that's good. and available community mental health and addiction. It says services, but capacity, maybe, I don't know, capacity for, I can't wordsmith it right now, but I hear what you're saying. You're saying that we may be able to get to it because it's sort of a hidden, sort of hidden in the other statute, but it would be nice to have that up front. It certainly would help with the people who I kind of represent that know I'm on this board and are hoping for something that gives them some safety.
I
To have it
had
up.
Mary Ann, then I had Dr. Copeland.
I just wanted to emphasize the Community Mental Health Act. I think, Jay, your comfort level will grow if you really review that, because I think that it does allow, this is broader than what we're talking about. We can include, the bylaws are not intended to include every focus we're going to have. It allows us to get referred to the Community Mental Health Act. That's all inclusive. So I think if that is some reassurance for you, and I would recommend you just reviewing that.
Yeah, so that's Article 2 in our purpose.
Tim,
Dr. Copeland.
you said
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Copeland, but I want to defer to Dr. Gorski. I think he had his hand up before
Okay.
me. Then I'll
Well,
say.
Now I'm focused on Wendy's section 1 under responsibilities, and I'm wondering, and Dick, I agree with you completely about the bylaws comment you made. I wasn't suggesting, just the Wild West wide open
Yeah.
and neat parameters, but I'm wondering if just adding in available community mental health and addiction services and some wording about education and training.
Yeah, that might do it.
I mean, just adding that in there, I don't, we could do a lot of wordsmithing, I suppose, but training is one thing, education, they both have a little bit of a different emphasis, but maybe those two things would cover enough broad bases, Dick, without that being too,
Right.
too wide open.
I like the word capacities,
Yeah. Mhm.
capability.
I just want.
That's fine, Bill. I like that.
I agree with that too, and I also agree with what Attorney Carpenter just put in the chat section, because that addresses basically all I was trying to get at. Because we're saying, okay, well, we can do this, we can do that, but then some of the language sort of pins us down. And all I'm saying is, let's just track the statute all the way through. And what he put here in terms of these funds may be used, because I can see people arguing, because I've lived here for 18 years too. I remember the sales tax, and I've been in some rooms with some of these grand poobahs, and I can remember some specific discussions about some specific language. And this language that Carpenter has laid out is basically addresses all I was trying to get at. These funds may be used to carry out the duties and powers authorized by the community. And then we can, all these other things we just talked about in terms of education and training, I agree with that too. As long as we got it locked in that, hey, we're going to do everything that the statute says that we have the power to do. And we're going to hold everybody accountable, including ourselves, for that. That's all I'm after.
Okay.
I concur 100%.
So
I like Paul's wording and his recommendations here in the chat.
okay.
Do we need to make a motion then to accept the revisions that suggested by Paul? And I would.
I don't think the motion. I think it's that I think really we need to call it to a vote with the addition of those revisions.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Whoever
Mr.
made the
Carpenter.
motion, so whoever made the motion should ask to amend their motion to approve the bylaws as amended.
Okay, so I think that's me. I'm gonna
And-
make a motion to amend the bylaws as discussed, and I think there are two things. Under responsibilities, section 1, add addiction services, including training and education in Winnebago County. Do you have that? Annually review and evaluate community needs and available community mental health and addiction services, including training and education in Winnebago County. That's amendment 1. And amendment 2 is to strike in section 4 the line that says the funds may only be used to provide mental health services for Winnebago County residents, and add section 6. And what is carry out the duties and powers authorized by the Community Mental Health Act, and put the citation. Is there a second?
Say that again, Paul.
Can you repeat what the first one was again, Wendy, please?
Okay, this is under responsibilities, section 1, first sentence. It now will read, annually review and evaluate community needs and available community mental health and addiction services, including training and education in Winnebago County. Or someone else wordsmith that. Including appropriate or relevant training and education.
Yeah,
Training
I think
and education focused
the word.
on the target population of the board.
So we need to get someone to second the motion that Wendy just made.
I will second.
All right. Second by Dr. Gorski. Bill, did you get everything that you listed? Or did you get all the amendments? I mean, Mr. Pointer?
Well, I'm not sure I do at this point. Honestly, Tim, because of being participant. We'll have to go over it.
You could go back and look at the recording too,
Yes.
after they put it online.
I think I have most of it. I'm just a little loosey-goosey on section 1. But I think I have the other amendments.
All right.
And I think I can, because I have, Vic, your copy in Google. I think I can generate that
Okay.
eventually. Do you want me to do that and email you guys right now?
No, he could also go back and look at the video after we get through with the meeting. And then he'll get exactly what we said.
Okay.
Excuse me, but don't we have to have what Wendy is worded in the motion if we're going to accept these bylaws today?
Yeah, let me.
We have a motion on the floor to accept the bylaws, okay?
Yeah, if I could, I'd be in favor of the email idea, Wendy.
Yeah, that's what I need to. Now I have to do technology. Excuse me. Okay.
So I have a motion and second. Are we waiting on the email to vote for it?
Yeah, well, I'm going to suggest we pause, take up new business while I'm getting this done. It's going to take me a few minutes. Continue the meeting, and then we can come back to it. Is that?
We can do that, Tim?
So what would I have to do, Paul?
To just kind of move.
Just table it until the end of the
move on to
meeting?
the next topic.
All right.
Okay. All right, I need to get a different, oh wait, here we go. Okay.
All right. Next topic, election of officers. I'd have a, let me look. So we have president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So I'd like someone to make a motion to,
Can I make a motion that we open this to nominations for officers?
Second.
second by Dr. Korski.
I would
All
like
right,
to
discussion.
nominate Mariana Body as president.
We have Mariana Body nominated as president. Is there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Dick Kunert as vice president.
Well, we're just doing president right now. We'll move to
Oh,
vice president
Oh,
next.
sorry.
All right, so, all in favor of Marianne Abadi being president of the Mental Health Board?
Just hold up a second. So the first motion was to open for nominations, and I guess that wasn't voted on, so that should be voted on.
Okay,
And then you have the nominations after that, assuming that that motion passes.
okay, so it's been motioned to open it up. And it was second by Dr. Gorski, so can we get a vote on open up the nominations? All in favor, wave your hand or say yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Been voted unanimously. I think Jay said yeah.
Right.
All right, so next nomination of president.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to enter my nomination for president, and for that, I would nominate Mariana Body.
Any other nominations?
Is that a motion, Paul? Do we second that? Or is that, or not?
It's probably not necessary because it's a nomination for president. So I think you can just vote on it.
So I would say if there's any other nominations, then if we get two people, then we could vote whether we want the first or second person. So that's why I said, is there any other nominations? Then after no other nominations and Marianne's the only nominee, then we vote on Marianne. So all in favor of Marianne being president?
Wave.
Aye, or say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Looks like she passed the vice president unanimously. Congratulations, Marianne. You are the president of the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board.
Yay.
Yay.
I'm counting on every single person on my screen. Yeah.
I'll be right behind you, Marianne.
Maybe I get titled, but oh boy, I'm not going to be alone in this one.
Next, are there any nominations for vice president?
I'd like to nominate Dick Kunert for vice president.
Marianne Abadi has nominated Dick Cooner for vice president. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Dick Cooner is nominated for vice president. All those in favor, signify by saying aye
Aye.
Aye.
or wave. Jay, did I hear you? It's been voted unanimously that Dick Cooner is our vice president. Congratulations, Dick Cooner, for your nomination and
Thanks,
voting
Tim.
on being vice president.
Thank you all.
I have something to say. I am looking for clarification. Is Wendy a voting member?
No.
Oh, that's right, I'm not.
Wendy,
I
you
forgot.
can't make
Wendy
a
and Jay
motion
aren't
then.
voting members. I'm sorry.
Right,
I
so we
forgot.
need
Oh,
to be
you're right.
careful about that.
I don't,
And
yes.
Wendy had made the motion on the bylaws also.
yeah, no,
So
you're
I guess
right.
it's just, this is a point of order that we need to correct that. And we also should not have Wendy voting on officers.
Right, and I
Correct.
didn't.
Thanks. I forgot. I totally forgot. Go ahead, Julie. You're on mute still.
It's vote, but what didn't count?
If you need someone to make the motion that Wendy made on the bylaws, I can do
Yeah.
that.
We can come back to that after we get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll reopen it. Next, we have a nomination for secretary.
I nominate Danielle Angelari.
Is
Second,
Danielle,
I second, yeah.
Danielle's been nominated as secretary. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Danielle's been nominated as secretary. Now we could vote. All those in favor of Danielle being secretary, signify by saying aye or wave.
Aye.
Aye.
It's been voted on unanimously that Danielle is the current secretary. Congratulations, Danielle, on being the secretary. Treasurer. Are there any nominations for being treasurer?
I nominate Dr. Copeland.
Dr. Copeland has been nominated by Dick Cooner as being the treasurer. Are there any other nominations?
I'm seconding that, if that's
Oh.
fine to do that. Sorry.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Dr. Copeland has been voted on as the treasurer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed have the same right. It's unanimous that Dr. Copeland is the treasurer for the Winnebago County Community Mental Health Board.
Thank you for that.
Thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Dr. Copeland.
Yay. I have now sent out the revised bylaws. If you want to check your email, I pray it went out.
We'll come back to that at the in other matters.
Okay.
So that concludes our nomination of officers. We have President Mary Ann Abadi, Vice President Dick Cooner, and Secretary Danielle Angelari, and Treasurer Reverend Dr. K. Edward Copeland are the officers of the Winnebago County Mental Health Board. Next on the list is the approval and adoption of having an administrator position. There, anybody want to not open that up for discussion? Mary Ann Abadi, still on mute.
So I've given this a lot of consideration, and I know that we all got that great job description, and I thank Julian for their research. And my concern that I want to briefly discuss with all of you is that at this point in time, we don't have a budget, and we don't know how much money we'll be taking in terms of the amount of sales tax. So it's almost as if we, number one, need to develop just a preliminary budget. That's number one. But number two, we do have the power to borrow some money, I think. I don't know who we'd borrow it from, not a bank, but there is that possibility. But we have to think about where the money is going to come from to pay anyone. So if we move ahead quickly with this approval of a position, I worry about that because I don't know how we compensate the person. There's some other creative ways maybe that we should be considering, since we know we need this person desperately, and the day-to-day workload, especially in the beginning, is so essential to have a person at the helm, and then also that person should be involved in helping develop our strategic plan. So I'm just kind of struggling with how do you hire someone when you don't, have any budget or money. That's what I wanted to open up today for us to discuss before we vote on, adopting this.
Dr. Gorski.
Marianne, you mentioned the ability to borrow money. What is the nature, how does that occur, and what's the breadth of that?
So,
Actually, I would like Wendy to speak to that a little more because I've talked to her about this legally, how we could move ahead with our finances, because we have to have at least a preliminary budget to determine, right now, day-to-day expenses in terms of any motion and any movement we make. There's going to be expense involved. Even developing our website, I mean, that's critical. And I know we've talked to the county about it, but I'm sure they will be expecting some compensation for that. And so I'm just opening this discussion up broadly, just to gain input from.
So I just want to, so first of all, I want to tell or just express to everybody, I think I talked to Julie this morning, and Linda, I think you did an amazing job in developing this draft of job description, because it really brought home to me how very important it is to have the right skill set in place to help us get off the ground correctly, and what a detailed and professional set of requirements we're going to need to meet in order to do this correctly. And I looked at the law, the Section 405, the Mental Health Act, and it does give borrowing authority. And during the week, I reached out to one of the county board members who I know, and his suggestion was for like de minimis things, like, because I said, gee, when we were working on the bylaws, that's a lot of typing. I'm a terrible typist. It would be nice if we had clerical support, to get some of these things out. And we've been relying on the chairman's clerical staff. Maybe we need our own. He said we should develop a little budget to submit to the county board to get some money going. But then I thought about, well, if we're talking about hiring somebody, they're not going to work for peanuts, attagirls, they're going to want, we have to fix a salary. And I see Steve Chapman is watching this meeting. I guess I'd welcome some input from him. I don't know how comfortable he's going to feel talking to us, but one of the other things the county board person suggested is R1, the Region 1 Planning Council has some resources. Apparently, the county has a contract with them for a certain number of hours a year. I don't quite know how that operates. I reached out to Frank Haney and said, hey, here's our dilemma. This is the next big stumbling block. How about you lend us some of your R1 hours so we can at least have a group of people that we can give some starting tasks to, so we can get off the ground, even though we don't have a budget. So when I think of borrowing, it's like, let's borrow against what our revenue is going to be in 20 and 21 to help us get off the ground, and nobody has to write a check. I haven't heard back if they're willing to do that, but it's just
I'll
an
look into
idea.
that.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I'll look into that.
That would be fabulous. And then we're not making a commitment to an individual, yet we're developing sort of a methodology, some groundwork, so that then we can attach a dollar figure to how much this job description is worth.
Go ahead, Linda.
I have a concern. I don't understand, and I don't know if other people on this board do, I do not understand the scope and the role of R1. And so my concern at this time would be their ability and the amount of time that they would be able to give us, when I think this is probably the most crucial time for us to be getting off the ground. So I do, Wendy and I had chatted earlier this week. One of the things, and I agree with her, and thank you for saying that, Wendy, is that looking at the job description really brings home the scope of responsibilities of the entire board and needing the expertise of somebody who can drive that. The job description was taken mainly from DeKalb. DeKalb only has $2 or $3 million a year, and yet they have hired an executive director and an administrative assistant. So I have concerns about contracting with R1, or I know Northern was mentioned before, although that was perhaps a little bit for data pieces. I really feel very strongly that we need somebody who's going to be able to lead. I don't have an answer for where the money comes from. I do wonder if an agreement could be made with the county board for another entity to pick up the salary of that person and be reimbursed after October. I wonder if that's something that we could do, you know, even if it was, and this is somebody at Nickney, somebody at United Way,
Right.
somebody at another organization. Could we work out something with an organization that would be able to house the person with a contract from the county board saying that as soon as the money starts coming in, they will be reimbursed for the salary?
Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I will tell you that I had a conversation probably a month ago with Frank Haney, and he recommended that this board should really consider R1. And I will tell you, my first reaction, I feel very strongly that, you know, we should not tie ourselves into any organization at this point. But I've taken it upon myself to investigate further. And I can tell you, I feel after talking to McHenry County, who uses their regional planning continuously. And so when Wendy talked to Frank Haney about the possibility of us not contracting as our board, but just borrowing some hours right now up front that the county already is engaged in, and if Tim can look into that, then we could know what it would feel like. We would know what they could offer us. And we would not be having to go out on a limb and hire anybody right now and worry about medical and worry about other things of benefits. We would just borrow some hours that would allow us to get off the ground. And they do have people within that office and new people that are going to be, from what I've been told, are going to be specializing in health, and in particular mental health. So that's all I know. It's far from detailed, but okay, Bill, you want to?
No, I just wanted to get in the queue, Marianne.
No, you go.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Linda too for that job description. I think it's exceptional. Oh, that's not my dog. Yes, Marianne, they do have someone new coming on board at R1 who's a very capable person. I don't know how public that is, but they do. But I think I have a couple thoughts. One would be, I think it would be perfectly appropriate to interview R1 to decide what it is exactly we need from them, and to decide how they would meet the need, assuming that Tim can find out if there's this loaning arrangement. The other thing, as I read the job description Linda put out, and she and I had a little back and forth about maybe what the comp would be, I'm just wondering how the public would perceive probably a significant compensation for a person with a master's at this level with us. I mean, October's a long way away. We know there's not going to be as much money as we thought there would be at the beginning. If that's one of the first things that hits, is a pretty high level executive director, and the compensation for that, I think we'd have to figure out a strategy to manage the public perception and reaction to that. Because I think there'd be blowback.
I agree.
I
There will
hear
be.
that.
Yep, I agree.
Go ahead, Julie.
I understand that there's always blowback when you hire administrative positions. I mean, anytime I bring an administrative position to my board, it's some people will really discriminate, and not discriminate, but want to really know why that's necessary. So I understand that politically and public perception wise, you have to work through that. I also know that based on what we need this board to, what we need this organization or whatever this, whatever we are to do, we have to have somebody who can do that. Now, if that means, because we've said, several of us have said, getting things off the ground. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. We need somebody to tell us what that means and to help us understand what it means to get everything off the ground. Because if we don't do this right, we talked at a couple other board meetings about, you know, this comes back to vote in 6 years, I think, or
Right,
you remember
6.
correctly?
6.
So if we don't do this right, then the concerns that Jay had are going to continue. The concerns that we all have are going to continue, and we will no longer exist. So I understand the money side of it. I understand that we're going to have to be strategic in how we figure this out. But I also know that you can't do this without that administrative position.
I just want to say, Julie, I agree with you. I wasn't speaking against the position. To me, it was, you know, the issue here would be a pretty high level position even before there was a stream of revenue. It seems different once there's a stream of revenue to explain what it seems to me, I agree with you 100%, an essential resource for this board. To me, is it timing? Is there a bridge with an R1 set of services? Or do we just prepare the ourselves for whatever the blowback is and have a story to tell and weather the storm? So, you know, my only comment was that we all would be prepared for it if we decided to go ahead. Not to say it's not an important position.
Go ahead, Julie.
Sorry. I guess I'd also want to know, I don't, somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Dr. Gorski, who said that we need to interview R1 or understand, I don't even know really what their role is and exactly what we would need from them. If we need somebody to kind of put that structure in place of how we need to present to the community and present to our steps in this process, and where that step of putting an executive person in place is, and that's something that they can do for us. I think that's a good, you know, that would be something that would get us through the time that we don't have the money, that we can get some information out about the things that we are doing, and what our goals are and so forth. I think that's, you know, that might be a good step, but maybe having somebody from that organization speak to the board on what that might look like, or I don't know.
So I'll speak about R1. So just a little bit of what R1 does is Region 1 Planning Council. So Region 1 is the Winnebago, Boone, I think McHenry County, these counties, Rockford Planning Council. I think all these, Stevenson County, they help with plans, help organizations plan, and you know, just like we talked about strategic planning, they help get some of that stuff together so we can develop a focus. And they have a lot of resources and people that we can access through the Region 1 Planning Council. And a lot of them are committed to the Rockford area and the local counties. You know, sometimes when you go outside of the counties, they're not as invested in the county, so they don't know exactly what's going on. But the Region 1 Planning Council are a lot of people that's locally invested and have tools and access to get, to help us focus in what we want to know. So they could get those, and, just like said, the county has hours allotted to them that Region 1 planning, has to give the county. So maybe if we haven't used all our hours for the year, maybe the mental health board could use a couple of those hours so Region 1 can help us develop, our plan as we go forward. So that's mostly what they do. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
I just want to add the one reassurance that, after looking into this regional planning, it's federally mandated. So, this is something that our area had to put together. And so I think, I don't know, there's some reassurance for me, because it's not like a private sector business trying to, get new clients or whatever. And then the other affirmation is just how helpful this regional planning is for the McHenry area and what a resource it's been. So I agree with Dr. Gorski. I'd love to have them come and present, because I don't know. I'm telling you just the surface kind of information. So I'd like to know more myself. So
Go ahead, Linda.
I would suggest, and I don't know if you want me to make a motion to this, that Mary Ann reach out to R1 and describe what we need and ask them for a proposal and a presentation to our board. At the next meeting would be great, because I do think we need to move forward with this. So if you would like me to move, I move that Mary Ann be empowered by the board to reach out to R1 to describe to them what we're looking for, ask them to put together a proposal, and they come back with a presentation for us.
First, I would like to see if we could use some of the hours that the county has first. Otherwise, we may need to see how much we have to pay Region 1.
And I include that then in my motion, that it would be using the hours that the county has already contracted with them, and we see how many they would be able to give us.
Right.
I second that motion.
And can I suggest maybe we also look at
Wait one second. So
Got a motion and a second.
it's been motion and second. So now
Dr. Copeland?
So go ahead, Wendy.
Should we also include the Pam Clark Reidenbach's organization at NIU, NICNI, and ask them for a proposal too? Because they work on governance issues as well. And although that involves money, the draw of R1 at this point is maybe we wouldn't have to write a check right now, and we can be a little loosey-goosey with how we're going to pay them until we actually have a budget. So I don't know.
Go ahead, Julie.
If we can have, I don't know, again, I'm not sure exactly what these two organizations are as far as how their work is and the scope and so forth, but if we can have a couple of different organizations share with us what they do and how they would do it and what it would cost. Like we said earlier, if we have to borrow money or we have to do something strategically, then I would rather have a comprehensive look before we jump in and hire somebody.
Mary Ann.
well, I was just going to comment that I would agree that, if we have a presentation from R1 and even if we got the hours for free, it wouldn't be the direction we wanted to go, then I would open it up. I've never known NICNI to do this exact, nor do they have a executive director and an assistant, and that's it. So in terms of them doing this, they're the ones that, I recommended for the strategic planning, and they do that, but I've never known them to do such comprehensive. Okay, I'm done.
Go ahead, Linda.
Now, I want to agree with Mary Ann, and that's what I was going to say. That is not NICNI's wheelhouse. and I just want to reiterate in my motion, I think if our concern is money, and to Bill's point about being a good steward with the money that will be coming in, and perhaps it is an easier sell to the community this fall to say that we want to hire an executive director. I think that our best bet right now would be to reach out to R1, and it may be that we hear from them and we don't like what we hear, or that we don't think that they have the capacity to do this. And then I think we go back, we develop a plan B. But I just think to help us be most efficient, right now, R1 sounds like the organization that we would want to hear a proposal from.
Right.
All right, so it's been motion and second, so any more
Bill-
discussion before we vote on it?
Tim wants,
Just
Bill
have,
wants to talk to him.
just
All
have
right, go ahead.
one other thought, Tim. Linda and Mary Ann, I'm fully on board. I agree completely. I still will go back and say, you look at the job description. I think it's so important to present to them what exactly are we looking for from them. I'm sure it's not this entire job description, I would assume. So it's probably elements of it. And again, it's so thoroughly put together, but what parts of this are we looking for them to do?
Right.
And in what span of time, and is it now till October? Yeah, but more specific so that they would have something to react to.
Right.
Well, actually, I think they would be able to tell us what they can do, and then we would be able to determine if it's going to meet our needs. Because right now, I don't think any of us know, maybe Tim knows a lot more about R1 than most of us. So I just think hearing from them, Linda's motion, I think that's excellent. So.
All right, go
And I
ahead.
think, Marianne, it would be helpful if you gave them maybe this draft job description so that they have a place to begin. Say, what can you do for us in the next 3 months to help us work towards this, and see what they come back with.
The other thing I wanted to do is not limited to just the administrator job, but just see what Region 1 has to offer to help us develop everything. So they have a lot more tools than just so we could, come up with a plan for everything. Like administrator. So any other comments or questions?
Call the question.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been second to have Mary and the body reach out to the county to see if we can use the hours for Region 1 Planning Council, and ask Region 1 Planning to give us a presentation to see how they can help the Winnebago County. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
One second. My understanding was that I'm reaching out to R1 for them to give a presentation, but you're reaching out within the county to find out if we can borrow the hours.
That's fine. I could do that as well.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Those in favor,
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, have the same right. All right. So we'll look into Region 1 Planning Council and see what they had to offer.
Okay.
Gotta find my agenda right quick to see what was next.
End of service.
Yeah. Are we done with the administrative topic? All right, so the span of service, how do we want to go? Anybody want to speak to that?
I'll open it up.
Okay.
What I would be very happy to do would be, a number of years ago, I worked with NAMI statewide to do sort of a scan of services and using the community support model. So I would be happy for the board to open up and share with you what that might look like, of how we could use that to use it to take an inventory what the community looks like in terms of the critical services that we would like to address. So if you're willing to do that, then I would, before next meeting, I'll make sure that I get that done.
All right. Any other comments or questions? So we'll have Dick look into developing a span of service that we could work with through NAMI.
Dick, I do have one question about this, and that is whether or not this would be kind of a clinical committee.
Yeah.
Is that what you're?
That's what I would like to see happen, Mary Ann. That you know, we talked last time in terms of our discussion of like what we would like in the way of subcommittees, and I'm certainly willing, you know, would love to have that, where there would be some people that would be interested in help me with this one. And yeah, and I used Tim, going back, I was on the board, statewide board of NAMI at the time. So, but no, I'm just simply saying that we use the CSP as our we model, because again, that's what we have sold. But that would be specifically designated for how this board could use that. So, okay.
And do you want to, at this time, develop this clinical committee? And
if there are others who are among us that want to, you know, be part of this, I'd love it. So.
Well, I'd like to give input. Danielle, your hand's up.
Jay, I can help you. With Jay Ware, would you like to be part of this?
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do something like that. I was listening to you talk, and I thought that, well, it sounded very technical and clinical. You know, it's not going to.
We need the family perspective always.
Yeah.
And it seems like Jay, I think this is a great opportunity to reach out to law enforcement and see, you know, what is the training that's going on and where are the gaps there that we might be able to address. Terry's talking here.
Go ahead, Dr. Johnny.
You're muted, Terry.
Unmute.
There you go.
There I am. Okay. You know, there are some things that they do, and I'm going to speak only from the law enforcement side of it. This last summer, many of us had taken a hostage crisis negotiation. Of course, we all had to be involved with it. I was supposed to be with the city too. The city pulled me out, stuck with the county and the state. And the city has their own, they use Rosecrans in any kind of crisis situation. So when that comes up, they do have so-called, they go to their trained personnel. Now, what the city has, I think, Wendy, and I think Jay, you and I had a sidebar conversation on this with regards to what are they doing, what are they all trained in. I personally can't speak for the city, but I can speak more for the county, being that I'm more with them on a lot of situations. Because in this class that we were taking, it addressed the mental illness, a lot of mental illnesses and what goes on, and addiction problems and things like that when you run into it. So I think it's a good idea that we talk with law enforcement, Wendy. I really believe that's a necessity, so that way we know what they are doing and whether or not that corresponds with us or not, or if there's any kind of link that we can have with that. And I think that'll help alleviate some of the problems that we're having with law enforcement in those crisis situations. Just a thought.
I think that's a good idea.
Oh.
We had a symposium last summer at the Ware Center on North Main Street. And at that time, they were talking about becoming more involved with the police department at that point, because it had got totally unhooked. And so it looks like something is moving in the right direction. That's good.
Just to give a history, in 2005, CIT training was for all law enforcement officers, really was funded by the state of Illinois. for law enforcement training. It's a 40-hour training. It's a national model. And we brought it, I personally was involved in it for about 3 years. And then it continued. To date, I can't tell you the number of officers because we not only trained Rockford Police, Winnebago County, Park Police, all the McChesney, Roscoe, but remember that over the years you have to have refresher. And this training is, I mean, it's more involved than, it involves 40 hours. So they had to, you know, get recruits to take, you know, be on the street. It's very expensive for the police to involve their officers. So over the years, the funding went away from the state and we have not been able to get back on a regular cycle. But this is a very highly touted. There's mental health first aid that I know Rosecrans does, and it's a briefer and it's a layman's kind of introduction. It's like teaching cardiac arrest, you know, defibrillation and how to use machines or how to revive a person. They teach that basic 101 from mental health as well, how to identify, how to de-escalate. But the real training, the Cadillac training is the CIT training. So that's a history. It used to be here and it's gone away pretty much.
And one of the other things I'm hearing from some of the people that are concerned is the assessment center that we use here in Winnebago County is totally understaffed, and just a lot of times when people get arrested or people get taken out of school, the assessment center doesn't have the means to assess properly, and so people don't get put into the services that the placement that they need to get. So that's one of the other things I wanted to look into in our span of service, as seeing how we can expand the services at the assessment service center that we use. Go ahead, Dr. Gorski.
Jay, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I completely agree with you. This is how I think we get law enforcement to support us, because I think the goal should be, even if someone's being arrested, if they go through a good assessment and we have mental health or addiction services available on right there, they're not going to jail. They're going to treatment. And then we have a better community.
For service does.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Gorski.
Well, I don't know if I'm going off on a tangent or coming back to where we started, but we started talking about committees and the idea of a clinical committee, and it sounded like maybe Danielle, Jay might be wanting to participate. I'm wondering about other committees. So as the rest of us as board members look, what other ideas are there for committees? To me, it's part of the structure of officers. And then if there's committees, what other ones should we be thinking about?
Well, naturally, in boards that I'm involved in, there's an executive committee based on officers, but you know, what they're charged with is, it depends what the focus is and the need is. But then also financial, I mean, we have now a new treasurer, and whether or not, you know, there is a need for that. Audit committee is, you know, another committee as time goes on. But right now, being as small and just getting off the ground, it is important for, you know, input into what other types of committee we should consider at this time, and availability and interest of the board members to be a part.
I was thinking that, Marianne, and I would, if Pastor Copeland would want me, I would, if there is a finance committee, I mean, finance and audit, I mean, those functions can go together. I'd be more than happy to serve with him if he wants me.
Definitely. I was going to ask you anyway, so thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's.
Can I point out an issue that we're going to have to deal with? And Dr. Copeland, I think this maybe is a finance issue. It's more governance. There's a legal gap in the way we are structured right now. So the authority for the sales tax comes under the Counties Act. And it authorizes the collection of this sales tax for mental health purposes. Then we have the Mental Health Act, and the county board enacted, using the mental health code, created us, okay? There's no connector between the money gathering and the mental health board. And that it may well create serious problems in the future in terms of we're developing a budget, but there's no actual mechanism to fund that budget. There's nothing that requires that that money from the sales tax be applied to our budget. I think we're gonna need some help in figuring out what needs to happen in order to close that gap. And I think that's for another meeting, but I just want to throw that issue out there because I think that's going to be an issue for how the finances get funneled into us to audit. And Paul had pointed that out to me. You know, we can borrow money, but we have no way to pay it back. I mean, we need to somehow address that.
We'll look into that.
Oh, and one other little shining point. We have no director's liability insurance. And at this point, after my conversation with Paul Carpenter, the county doesn't cover us. I know from my work at the Carrie Lynn Center, director's insurance is available. It's, you know, it's not horribly expensive, but it's like, I don't know, $1,000 a year or some amount. Again, we have no budget. So at some point, we're going to have to go to the county board and say, hey, we need some money to cover this, or we need you to draft an ordinance including us and your liability or something. And I think maybe the finance committee might be a good place to look at that stuff.
So I think after we start getting the revenue in, I think, you know, I understand we're pushing everything to go forth as fast as we can, but at the same time, right now, it doesn't hurt to wait for the revenue to come in. That way we have money, we know what we're looking at, and we can develop everything we want to right now, but at the same time, we still have time to wait for the money to come in. And so I don't say we need to rush on everything that puts financial strengths on the board as of yet. Any other comments or questions?
Tim, I agree with you that we really need to take one step at a time. I mean, these are all issues that obviously there's concerns about, but we, you know, I think now we have officers, now we have bylaws. You know, to me, that's great accomplishments right there. It's a good start. We're moving ahead. And, you know, these are important issues. We do know one thing is that the sales tax, the half-cent, has to go towards mental health. I mean, we know that, and that's, you know, the county agreed to this board purposely with the intention that this money would be spent on mental health and in addiction services and programs and whatever. So I think, you know, the legal bees will have to take a very close look at this. But for today's purposes, I feel like we've made some real progress. So
yeah.
The only other thing that I would love us to entertain, and it's on the agenda, is getting dates for a strategic plan and, trying, because I think maybe that is too premature, because if we want to have anybody in place that's assuming the administrative responsibilities, even if it's R1, hours, maybe we need to deal with that and then look at the strategic plan.
That sounds good. Any other comments or questions?
Oh, a quick, just a question. The training we had to take, what was it? The
FOIA training or the Open Meetings Act?
Open Meetings Act, and the certificate we got, are we supposed to send that to somebody, or do we email it somewhere, or?
So we haven't figured out exactly where we're going to store it. I know the county stores it with the state's attorney's office. I don't know if at the beginning we want to store ours with the state's attorney's office. Would that be something that would be necessary, or just as long as we have them, right?
Yeah, I would just
Go
hold
ahead,
on.
Paul.
I mean, we'll figure out what to do with them still.
All right.
I also have a question on that. I had to go through that for the Community Relations Commission, and I sent it to somebody with the city, Nick, I think his name was, and so I've already got that. I've got a copy of it here too, so I suppose I just wanted to throw that out there. I've already been through that.
Yeah, so we just need to have a copy for our board as well. Go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to make sure that we circle back to the bylaws and make sure we approve those.
Okay.
So I think we
So
need
are we
Julie
done
to
with the
make,
span of, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, did Julie want to make the motion to approve that with the revisions then?
First, are we done talking about the span of service and the strategic, we're done talking about the span of service?
Are we going to, so Mary Ann's gonna ask R1 to do a proposal for our next meeting?
I'm going to ask if they
Okay.
would be able to present at our next Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're done with the span of service, the strategic planning, we're gonna lay that over until another time, right? All right, so now we're opening up the motion to adopt the bylaws with the amendments given by Wendy. Dr. Gorski?
Yeah, Tim, Wendy, would you mind once again just reviewing exactly what you changed?
Yes, hang on a second. Okay.
I'm looking-
Start in article. Oh, I corrected a typo under authority. Article 4, Section 1
Mhm.
now reads, annually review and evaluate community needs and available community mental health and addiction services, including training and education in Winnebago County. So I include the available mental health addiction services and training and education relating back to mental health.
Got it.
That's number 1. Number 2 is in section 4 of the same area. We struck the language, these funds may only be used to provide mental health services for Winnebago County residents. And we added section 6, carry out the duties and powers authorized by the Community Mental Health Act, and then I cite the statute.
Where's that at? Sentence 6?
6, it should say 6. Let's make sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, carry out the duties and powers authorized by the community mental, this is under Article 4.
Oh, okay.
So
So all the
All right.
changes are in Article 4, responsibilities.
I have a question. why did we strike these funds may only use provided by mental health services in Winnebago County residents?
My understanding was we were trying to be broader so that we could use the funds, because community mental health services would not necessarily include education and training, where the Mental Health Act gives us much broader authority.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
It also, if it says only to provide mental health services, arguably you wouldn't be able to pay for administrative staff.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Provide
true.
mental health services.
Great point.
Where the statute specifically authorizes that.
Would you say that again, Paul?
If you keep the language that says the funds may only be used to provide mental health services,
Yeah,
then you might not be able to use the money to hire an administrator or an executive director, for instance.
okay, okay.
Where the Mental Health Act, I've lost my copy of it and all my papers, but the Mental Health Act specifically allows us to retain an administrator for these purposes. Oh, here we go. It specifically says it allows us to enter into contracts. We can organize a not-for-profit to support our services, and it allows us to employ and establish compensation and set policies for personnel, including legal counsel. So in other words, the Mental Health Act gives us much broader powers.
Okay.
All right. So those are our amendments. All those in favor?
Can we make sure that, so did Julie move that?
Yeah, Julie, Linda moved it. Oh yeah, Julie moved it first, and then we have a second by who?
I'll second it.
All right, Dr. Dardini seconded. We'll let
Okay,
him second.
all right, good.
All right, so it's been motion and second. All those in favor of adopting the bylaws with the necessary amendments, give us sign by saying aye or wave.
All right,
All right, it's been motion and accepted unanimously. So we have bylaws for the Winnebago County Mental Health Board.
Yay!
Hey,
We are
happy dance.
good,
Are there
good,
any other matters?
good day.
Do we have a date for our next meeting?
That's what I
Do we want to give the R1 time to develop a strategy to talk to us or speak with us? Or do we want to just get a date from them to see when they're ready? And then schedule our meeting after that?
That actually sounds smart.
Dr. Copeland's.
Dr. Copeland.
So moving forward, starting on May the 29th, I'll be out on Fridays. Thursday, well, every other Thursday and Friday, teaching out of town. So I guess the bottom line is after May 29th, if there's any way we could have our meetings on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, that would be helpful for me.
So we could go back to Tuesday. Dr. Darney, did you have anything? We didn't hear you.
I said, no, that's two, I'm just acknowledging, yeah, Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is good with me.
Okay. All right, so we'll check with to see if we could get the county hours and check with R1 to develop a date. If we can't get a date from them, then we'll just check for a date through the email.
Sounds good.
Sound like a plan?
I will contact R1 and I'll let you know their availability and make sure that it's on. Try to persuade a Tuesday during the day, if possible. And, we'll have another Zoom meeting. I'm assuming and presuming, so.
What about just tentatively setting it like May 26th at 2 o'clock? And if they can't do it, then we can move it. Or June, whatever the Tuesday is.
I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Can we look at Wednesday, the 27th instead?
I'm good.
As long as it's after 2 for me.
It'll be Wednesday, the 27th. If it won't be good for me, depends on if I have jury duty and if I could get out on time.
You're not gonna have jury duty. No, they've canceled court.
No trials till after June 1st at least.
Yeah, so do a happy dance, Tim.
Right. Well, my next scheduled date was on the 6th, so I was just checking. They haven't called me yet, so I didn't know. All right.
So what, did we decide on a date?
27th?
Yeah. The 27th, I'm assuming we'll try 2 o'clock again.
All right,
All right.
good going.
Yeah.
One question, are we going to begin using our new email domain now for all communication?
We should.
I haven't.
If everybody could send them out, because everybody doesn't have everybody email domain, so if we could send everyone our new email address, that would be great.
This is Dan. We can send an email out to everybody at that new address. Do you want me to send that to all your personal addresses so you can see both of them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
and there are still some technical glitches, so maybe for the next meeting, do both.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't set mine up yet. I've tried.
Yes.
Call the help desk.
Good luck, Marianne.
I'm gonna need it.
Dr. Gursky, did you have anything? I seen your hand up a couple times.
No, it was just about the email, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other matters?
I move we adjourn.
All right, it's been a motion that we adjourn. A second. Dr. Gursky seconded. All those in favor?
Bye.
Bye.
Be well, everybody.
All right.
Be well,
take
be
care.
safe.
We adjourn.
Good weekend. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
You too.